would like to just start us off by saying welcome again. This is our fourth flood recovery update and connection Zoom call. And we're pleased to have you and pleased to have you watch any of the recordings too. So my name's Emily Schaefer. I'm the Director of Fund Development here at the Midland Area Community Foundation. And we are so excited for this program today. We have our friends from the Midland Business Alliance. But before we introduce them, I just wanted to give some quick updates. As I mentioned, we're recording this and we are pleased to offer these recordings as part of the work of the long-term recovery group here in Midland County for flood recovery work. And really, these are meant to provide updates and opportunities for connections for the community. The previous sessions have provided and focused on a variety of different topics. The first one, we did an overall scope of long-term recovery and case management. The second session was about FEMA and the work that they are doing, and provided some really helpful hints and not hints, but helpful takeaways for folks that are survivors of the flood and the dam failure. And then also 2 weeks ago, we had mental health practitioners that really provided some helpful tips for really working through some of the things that come as a part of trauma. And so all of those were recorded and are on the midlandfoundation.org website, which links to the Community Foundation's YouTube page. So we definitely encourage you to check those out and also check this recording out, and please don't hesitate to share it. So today's session, we are going to be talking, like I said, with the Midland Business Alliance, and we are going to be focusing on having them focus on really the business recovery work that the Business Alliance has been participating in, both with COVID and with the flood. And really, from the Community Foundation's perspective, we understand that for a thriving community, really building our livelihood here in Midland County is all about economic development. And that's really what the Midland Business Alliance is all about. And that is what today's session will really touch on. So just some housekeeping too. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat, and I will make sure that Tony and Nicole have those, or anyone else that might be able to provide some clarity on those questions. And we'll have time at the end too for people to just openly ask questions as well. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my friends at the Midland Business Alliance. Tony Thomas is the President and CEO of the Midland Business Alliance, and Nicole Wilson is the Vice President of Economic Development for the Midland Business Alliance. So take it away, guys.
Great. Thank you, Emily. I really appreciate our partnership with you and the whole team over at the Midland Area Community Foundation. It's a long-standing partnership, but in 2020, we've all been focused how we work together. And so we appreciate that. We appreciate the other folks who are on the call. I know so many of you are also partners in terms of really helping our community. And that's, that's what our focus is. And Nicole and I are pleased to be able to be with you. And we're gonna, kind of run through some what we've been focused on in 2020 with a particular focus on the flood and dam failure, but also going to touch on COVID, because that's been kind of all encompassing, and it's really impossible to separate that. And so many that were hit by the flood were already trying to deal with the challenges of COVID-19. So we just wanted to share some tools and resources, and that's what our goal is, to have, as the slide shows, an integrated portfolio of the tools and resources. So with that, we'll go ahead and kind of talk about some specific things, and Nicole and I will kind of both take some turns, but I'm sure jump in with each other just to add some color commentary. So on our first slide, we're talking about different economic relief, as I mentioned with COVID-19. When that hit in March, so many businesses weren't able to operate for a period of time, or had to just completely change their mode of operations. And it's amazing to see the entrepreneurs, how people have innovated and adjusted, but still a struggle when we've got a global pandemic. And so we were able to provide some assistance out to small businesses right off the bat through the MEDC, $80,000 that we were able to get out in grants. So, we're usually about $2,500, but just to help businesses on the front end. And then We were honored to be able to assist the Midland Area Community Foundation on small business support, zero interest 12-month loans, and we just kind of gave feedback in terms of our business community. So we were pleased to be able to help with that. And then on our local level, which is always just so amazing, both on the corporate and private family foundations, donated $200,000 to help small businesses and legacy businesses that have been here for so long. And we were able to get those out in the form of grants. And then just most recently, we're actually just wrapping it up. Part of the CARES Act, the Federal CARES Act, went to the state, and the state of Michigan allocated a significant part for Restart grants. And so we worked with regional partners, but just for Midland specific, we had just over $1 million. The grants, the highest end grants were $15,000, and then we went down to $1,000, $2,000 for businesses. Just again, trying to help with costs that are associated with navigating through COVID-19. So those we thought were some important tools to assist. And then we put together, our tool book, a toolkit about how can we, as we reopening, how can we open in a safe way? What's the business legal implications in terms of doing this? Very industry specific, because some industries open sooner than others, and they had different guidelines. So trying to help understand that, certainly financial resources, legal implications. We want to make sure that employees were safe. So how do you structure that? And you have to put together new guidelines and new protocols, and human resources tools, and working with our friends around the state in terms of what those would be. And then also, we've had nearly 200 executive orders. And so trying to go through those, because I think, if you're running a business, you're busy enough. I come from a small family business, just trying to navigate the day-to-day challenges of that in a COVID era. And so understanding what the executive orders mean, how they're changing, what that means for your business. And so, I joke that Diane Middleton, who's our Vice President of Advocacy, I think she's going to in line for a law degree with as proficient as she's become at getting through those and getting that information out. But we felt like that was an important part of our COVID. And so kind of as we look at some of the other things that we've been doing, as we were trying to go through this all and put those tools out there, then we were obviously hit by the flood. And that's where, okay, so how do we take this and still navigate through COVID that so many businesses are struggling with, but how do we help people that were just so dramatically impacted with the flood? Certainly we've seen that in the Sanford community, but if you go up Poseyville Road out to the Bullet Creek area, you go up to Edenville, businesses were dramatically impacted. I mean, many of them with just massive amounts of water and damages to their physical structures. Some were impacted in a fashion that it's just logistically tough to get to their business. And so how do we kind of help them? So, I mean, like so many of you, the first step was boots on the ground. We went over to the Sanford Area Chamber of Commerce, tried to help clean the building out. Our ambassadors were out there trying to help make sure they're getting resources and supplies out. But then, as everybody on this call knows, it's a long term, and there's things that we're trying to do right now in the short term and the intermediate term, but also in the long term. And also looking at what are all the resources on the federal level, on the state level, on the local level, both public and private. And so I'm going to flip it over to Nicole at this point, and we just kind of talk through some of those and how we've been trying to help businesses navigate with the commonality in terms of resources, but then also some that are specific to individual businesses.
Yes. Good morning. Thanks, Tony. Again, my name is Nicole Wilson, and I serve as the Vice President of Economic Development here for the Midland Business Alliance. So we'll go through a couple of, well, plenty of what we've been up to over the course of the last several months. See if I can get my mouse to click through to the next slide. There we go. So MBA really has fulfilled several different roles in recovery, separating, as Tony said, as we move through the different stages of that recovery. So the first really was data collection. We really needed to understand what the impact was to the business community. And so the goal in that role was to build relationships with the affected business community and to understand what that impact was and to start to align with the resources that could be available. So between Tony and I, we interviewed and spent time with about 50 businesses in 4 main areas of Midland County, Sanford, downtown Sanford in particular, the city of Midland, both out on West Main Street and then North Saginaw Road, Poseyville or the Bullet Creek Business District, and then a few on the M20 corridor that were affected as well. Through those conversations, we have heard reports of more than 10 million in damage. Obviously, the cost to rebuild is far exceeds 10 million, but this is just the initial damage assessment. And then the average legacy of these affected businesses, on the whole, is about 25 years. So these are very long-standing businesses. Many, especially those in Sanford, are several generations in ownership. So it was, I guess the silver lining there is they were all well established and really had built such a foundation of support in their community, so that when this happened, they had so many folks volunteer from their community to show up and help. So definitely long-standing businesses in the community. The second role that MBA really played in that short-term relief was as a grant maker. This is something that's through COVID, we became very familiar with, and certainly isn't anything new for the Community Foundation, but here at MBA, we served in that role to come together with the Community Foundation to provide flood relief grants. And so those were to provide interim support for businesses that were planning for and were able to reopen or work toward reopening. Those grants were up to $5,000 and they were set aside for rebuild expenses. We will finish those up this week, and so those funds will all be out. The next role that we've really played, and this will be ongoing for quite some time, was as a connector. So the goal there was to connect those impacted businesses to the recovery resources and the expertise to assist in their relief and recovery efforts. Those took place on a couple of different scales, and so we separated them that way. To date, most of that connection work has been on the federal level with the Small Business Administration. We were able to host a disaster recovery webinar with SBA experts to answer the questions of businesses that were impacted. And then case management. When a federal disaster declaration comes forward, we are given a public affairs designee. And so her job was to identify what the needs were of each business. And so reaching those businesses was where MBA was able to fill in that gap to connect SBA with the affected businesses. And so she could identify the right case management kind of moving forward with that. As of September 20th, which was 10 days prior to the closing of the window, we had 12 businesses that applied for SBA loans in Midland County. 6 of those had been approved. For a total of about $682,700. That number is slightly higher today, but I wasn't quite ready to publish those numbers yet, just needed to vet them out a little bit. There is a path to fixing or repairing the denial if they were denied the first round. And so if any of those businesses that have been denied are listening to this and they need some assistance, we'd encourage them to reach out. Just because the window is closed doesn't necessarily mean there isn't an opportunity to remedy the issues that created the denial. So certainly want to make ourselves available for that. Early on, we hosted the USDA here in Sanford, Midland County, to answer the questions of those affected businesses. It was a very interesting meeting where they went through all of the different funding programs in their catalog. And that was actually in advance of the actual disaster declaration. Those were programs that are available all of the time. But now that the disaster declaration has happened, or at that time, that catalog opens up much more broadly. And so part of that was to participate in the roundtable, understand that funding catalog, both for the disaster and then ongoing as needs arise afterward. At the state and local level, our support has really been for projects that apply to state programs that already exist. Most notable is the Community Revitalization Program, which is an opportunity for a couple of the buildings in downtown Sanford that we have been able to connect to consider what the residential implications are in their building. That strengthens their application. And as housing is one of the issues that has been noted in recovery efforts. So working with the state of Michigan team to make that connection and start to help those business owners to craft a pro forma and a project scope to move forward for funding consideration. And then I'm going to turn it back over to Tony to talk a little bit more about the Sanford and Gladwin Rebuild project.
Good. Thanks, Nicole. Yeah, and this is one, we just announced a few weeks back, but honored to be partnering with Three Rivers Construction with support from local and corporate foundations to assist some legacy businesses in Sanford and in Gladwin. And so, the goal is to help three long-standing businesses, Sanford Hardware, Red Oak Lounge, and Strikers Marina, to kind of expedite their rebuild. And we want to make sure that, as people look in the community, we know a lot of this is going to be long-term, and we're going to be working together for years. But we also want to make sure that we're helping those businesses and people see that it is coming and we're moving forward in a real substantive way. And so we're pleased to be partnering on that effort. But and I say partnering because so many people, when we look at United Way, Midland Area Community Foundation, the relief effort, this is a truly a team effort, and this is one piece of it that we're excited to be able to assist with and help these businesses move forward in a quick manner and try and work with all the other businesses in so many of the ways that Nicole's outlined.
I'll tag back in here. A couple of the other relief and recovery efforts that we have been involved in was very early on to create a disaster recovery toolkit for our business community. So it talked about the CDC cleanup guidelines when dealing with mold and what were the important things to consider. It very heavily focused on PPE, right, which we've all become so familiar with, and making sure that we were properly protecting ourselves when doing those cleanup efforts. Also mentioned funding sources, not just state, federal, and local, but also some of our financial institutions have created programs to assist flood victims. And so those are referenced in there. And then, of course, the network of local agencies like the Midland Area Community Foundation, United Way, and others that have tagged in to provide some assistance. As Tony mentioned, several of the business owners were also affected in their homes. And so helping them to understand what that kind of network of assistance looked like. So it's just a photo of the front of our disaster recovery toolkit there. And so lastly, kind of talking about what is next for the effort toward relief recovery and stabilizing the economy and our business community. Matchmaking is a term that I use in this way, and it's really understanding the individual needs of the businesses that were impacted and to compare that against available funding sources that were made available through the Federal Disaster Declaration, and then existing programs that could help to replace equipment or align with providing, equipment and financial resources, and then looking at infrastructure as well, how those businesses relate and connect to the infrastructure that exists and maybe doesn't exist at present. I think Tony would echo part of this is celebrating the wins and the opportunities coming out of it, seeing our business community come back and help one another out and create those connections to their community as well. And then obviously continuing to support our business community through their rebuild projects. So hand-holding a little bit through the application processes and helping them to understand what sort of financials or pro formas might be required for projects. And then Tony, if you'd like to talk about recovery and rebuild advocacy, that's a piece that you're involved in.
Yeah, I mean, with the size and scale of this, this is there's short-term solutions we need, and working with Four Lakes Task Force has done an amazing job of taking the lead in terms of resources we need, whether it be at the local level, at the state level, at the federal level. But also, this is going to be a long-term journey in terms of restoring these lakes, and we want to be supportive and work with following the lead with the Four Lakes Task Force in terms of making sure that we're all those folks who need to be hearing about this and understanding this are hearing that. And so we're pleased to be able to be supportive of that. But also from the advocacy standpoint, this year was certainly uniquely devastating in terms of the dam breaking. But when we look historically, as a community, we've had flooding issues going back decades. There are legacy challenges here, and so are there opportunities? I mean, it's infrastructure costs are significant. Are there opportunities again on the state and the federal level to partner and to look for resources that can help with some of these legacy challenges. So I think that that's something that we're very focused on, working with our partners at the City of Midland and the County of Midland and all the other local units of government, but just trying to make sure that we're, exploring every avenue, in terms of resources that might be available. Certainly, as I said, with the Four Lakes Task Force, but even beyond that, in terms of some of these long-standing challenges that we've seen as a community. So I think that will be a key role that we're assisting in, and in some cases, trying to help lead on as we move forward. So that's kind of I know Nicole covered a lot of those pieces, but that kind of gives Emily an overview of where our focus has been in these recent months. And again, we just appreciate the opportunity to be on the call, and we welcome any questions or comments.
Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, we'll keep it open for a few here, and then I do have some questions I'd like to ask unless anybody has any that they'd like to share. Well, we will keep the chat room open, and feel free to unmute yourself if you do have a question, and feel free to ask. But one of the things that I wondered is, in addition to so much of what you guys are doing with connecting the dots and providing resources with community partners, what additional resources are you guys seeing in the region that are available to help businesses, both, whether it's COVID and the flood or one or the other?
Yeah, and I'll let Nicole jump in on this too. I mean, I think a lot of this, especially when you look at COVID, I mean, it's obviously not isolated to us. It's a global challenge. And so we've been partnering, with our partners in, Isabella County and Saginaw and Bay, or around the whole region in terms of looking for solutions, trying to be supportive. But there was also, as we mentioned with the Sanford Gladwin, Gladwin County was dramatically impacted, as were some areas of Saginaw. And so how we can partner with them, in terms of looking for solutions and resources. I think that that's really important, that, if we work together on a regional basis, I think that helps amplify our voice and make sure those concerns are being heard.
Sure. In terms of financial resources, those are relatively limited now that the FEMA and SBA deadline has passed. However, some of those still needing resources that may be applied and then didn't receive those funds, really should reach out so we can help navigate the reason for that denial, so we can help in that way. And certainly if we haven't connected with those businesses that may have been impacted, we think we've got everybody. We've done a pretty thorough search and call for connection there, but definitely should reach out. There are some local sources still available, and certainly we could try the connection with SBA on an idle basis or something like that. So.
Okay, thank you. I know something that's kind of come up because of COVID, or just bubbled up to the top. It's been something that I know we've been looking at from a countywide perspective, but the broadband issue that we have and the needs for businesses throughout Midland County, including specifically the flood impacted areas. Can you talk a little bit about those needs, and maybe as a follow-up, what are you doing to address some of the needs countywide?
Yeah, thanks, Emily. I mean, I think if we didn't know before COVID hit how critical broadband was, we certainly know it now. And we've seen it kind of in every facet of our life. When you talk about telemedicine, when you talk about the kids being at home, trying to go to school, certainly for businesses, we've got global corporations operating here, and people can do that, but they need broadband, they need good connectivity. And so a critical issue with COVID, and then as you mentioned, with the flood on top of that, this is going to be just so essential. So we're working together again with the Midland Area Community Foundation, local units of government, the county, certainly with the city and townships, to kind of have, I think right now we were very focused on having a clear assessment of where we're at. I mean, I often say this is kind of 100 years ago when we talked about rural electrification. It changed the way people lived. It changed their lives in just an absolutely fundamental way. Well, broadband is the same, because it connects us in vital ways. We think of it from the social setting, but again, from the medical, from the educational, from the business. And so we want to get a clear picture of where we are in Midland County. Sometimes you'll see maps that say, okay, well, we've got coverage here, here, and here. But then as we talk to the citizens, like, well, no, not so much. And so making sure that we have an accurate assessment. And then I guess different from rural electrification. When you looked at power suppliers, it tended to be, you had one company you were working with. This is a myriad of companies, which is a challenge and an opportunity. It's, you've got satellites, you've got cable, you've got phone, you've got wireless. So it gives you a lot of different tools, but you also need to bring a lot of people to the table in terms of what might be the best solution for one area might be very different from other areas. So I think that we're going to work very hard to have that clear picture of that. And then, we've seen at the state and federal level, a commitment of resources for broadband. I think we'll continue to see that. So I just think we need to be able to make the case that we've got the data, the information. At the local level, there might be some resources and solutions that we can have. And it's not going to be, again, it's not going to be a single solution, but I think it's going to be a lot of different pieces coming together to do that. And, working with all of those entities. So that's at the top of our agenda. I know I had a chance this week to meet with our board, and that's a kind of a shared priority and a passion is, okay, how do we as a community, and I say as a community for Midland, but there's no line that, when that signal is going to stop when it gets to Bay County or Saginaw County. I mean, I think there may well be some opportunities to, again, to partner on a regional level for these solutions as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. And then from a consumer perspective, what message do you have for consumers in this time as to, thinking about how we can support businesses, particularly our small businesses?
Yeah, we've been very focused on, buying local, supporting our local businesses here. I think it's essential. We had a fun event we did this summer, the Great Gift Card Giveaway that we sponsored along with CBM, where for 40 days we did a $100 gift card for a different local business. And you were eligible if you liked it or shared it on Facebook. And we would get 10,000 impressions in a day. And we have, and Nicole spoke to that. And when you look at these businesses, the average is 25 years. We've got legacy businesses that have been here. They've supported our community. The softball team, the baseball team, all the activities that they're the ones that support it. And so we just want to make sure that we're a vehicle to let people know those businesses are out there. They're still trying to operate. Maybe they're having to do things in a different fashion, but really just encouraging our community to support those businesses, because that is vital. And so many of them have done an amazing job of navigating through this and are making it through this. But it's, we're still very much on this journey, and it's gonna probably be months yet ahead. And we want to make sure that we keep them in the forefront.
Continue to buy local.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah, that's an encouragement to me every time I go. I feel like it's a donation when I buy extra goodies from some of my favorite places. So thanks for that encouragement to continue that. And Tony, I know you mentioned some of the challenges with broadband and that, but what other challenges are you really seeing with businesses and what they're facing?
The COVID that we continue to talk about, and I think the uncertainty that goes with that. When are we going to get past different phases? When's there going to be a vaccine? I think so much of that, and that affects businesses across the country and frankly across the globe. But the uncertainty that's tied with that, it was a beautiful summer, and it's starting off as a beautiful fall. But summer in Michigan allows us to do some opportunities where you go to a restaurant, you go to places, you can do things a little bit differently. Come February, it might provide some different challenges. And so I think we're going to have to continue to work to think creatively, find support and resources to help businesses that, in the summer months, we're able to adjust in a fashion and keep social distancing. But as this goes along, how we're able to do that and then in those months. And I would also say that, as we went into this year, we talked about talent and trying to find, match employees with employers, and that was at the top of everybody's list. I still hear that regularly from businesses. And, I think it's one that we're trying to take a deeper dive into, because when you look at the unemployment numbers, they're significantly higher than they were in February. And yet employers across the board that I hear from are still struggling to connect. And so I think that that's going to be right there as businesses kind of gear up and they start moving forward and hopefully moving past this, be it the flood, be it COVID, that they make sure that we're connecting them with the employees so they're able to operate in the fashion that they need to.
Hmm. And then you mentioned just a little bit about how maybe some of your priorities have shifted or stayed the same with that matching of employees with employers, or folks that don't have jobs and matching them. What are some other kind of key priorities of the Midland Business Alliance, and how have they shifted throughout this past year and through the pandemic?
Yeah, and I'll just say a couple, and then I'll turn over to Nicole in terms of, because we're kind of doing a deep dive in terms of economic development and really where it makes sense to be focused as we move forward. Because I think that the core essentials of our community are great, and we've got strong businesses that are making the adjustments, making the transitions. They're vibrant on the largest businesses to the smallest businesses. So I think as a community we're in a strong position, but with everything we have to be flexible and adapt. And I look to our 4 strategies of the Midland Business Alliance: innovation, entrepreneurship. We're the city of modern explorers. We've seen that with businesses, like Savant and business across that have adjusted their business and made new products. And pivot's getting overused, but it's an accurate statement. Have pivoted as they try and work through this. So I think that's going to continue to be really important. Economic development. I know Nicole will speak to all of our efforts in that realm. I talked about talent, how we make sure that we're connecting businesses with employees and making sure that they have the tools and resources they need. And then advocacy, having that voice in terms of the impact on the local level, on the state level, and the federal level. So I think those are the core strategies that I don't see changing as we go into this, but certainly you adjust where you're focused on those strategies as you try and deal with the COVID and the flood and the dam breaks.
Certainly. So I'll tag in there very quickly. I think key priorities continue to be, Tony touched on broadband. That's huge, kind of that infrastructure piece. While it's not physical infrastructure, it is the virtual infrastructure necessary to support this kind of shifted world, if you will. Certainly helping our businesses to adapt and understand their relevancy and where opportunities exist to pivot and shift their business model or the product that they're making to adapt a little bit better to this new normal. I think that's definitely part of our world. Other kind of key priorities, we continue to talk about attracting new businesses and talent and workforce. We talk about supporting the businesses that we have here, certainly through COVID, financial and other, where to locate PPE and those kinds of things were part of our COVID world. Support is always a big part of what the MBA does and will continue to do, both in training our workforce and understanding maybe what's next. And then, of course, catalyzing entrepreneurship. Tony mentioned new businesses and startup operations, and certainly we want to encourage that and create or more formally define what that ecosystem looks like as someone's ready to start up their new business. And we certainly get those calls fairly regularly. So understanding what that ecosystem looks like and how do we help them to visualize or realize their dreams, if you will, in terms of opening and owning their own business and what challenges they might face. I think certainly, fostering new high-wage jobs is important. Attracting, retaining, supporting. In the economic development world, we talk about retention, which is really just helping our businesses to connect more fully to the community and so that their needs and goals are realized as well, to help them see the value in our community and stay here. We certainly continue to help out with some community development stuff, or initiatives around Midland Blooms that takes place. Obviously that didn't happen this year, and I think we're all missing that. So excited to hopefully see that come back next year. Helping out the city where applicable on some of their mobility and transportation through the master planning process, understanding where we can be of value there. So I think those are kind of priorities moving into next year.
Thank you. I'll open it back up again to any of our attendees that might have any questions. Feel free to chat them or unmute and ask. Well, just in summary, I'm hearing really that the door is open for businesses and for folks that have questions. But I'm not sure if you guys are physically open. So what's the best way for folks to connect with the Midland Business Alliance in this time?
Well, thanks, Emily. We are physically open. We've got a protocol in place, like so many do. But most times it's people that certainly can just send us an email. Go to our website, mbami.org. The pieces that Nicole showed in terms of our toolkits are there. A lot of resources, but they can email us. They can call us. It's inspiring when we look at our community, how people band together and living here, my whole life, I know that, but you see that and it's inspiring. And, we look at our farmers market, how we continue to operate and adjust. We're still having a critical discussion in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the midst of this. Our events, we're doing things differently, but we're still doing them. And I think that's important. And we're going to continue to where we need to lead, where we need to just to walk alongside and help and support. But I think in the long run, we're going to get through the flood, the dam breaks, the COVID, and I think we're going to see a strong and vibrant Midland continue to move forward.
Thank you. I agree. And so just in closing, we want to just provide folks opportunities to, just a reminder that always for individual support or kind of a hub of information out there is just to call simply 211 if you ever have a need. They're a great resource and really are the switchboard, if you will, of understanding where to direct folks that have a need in the community. And then also for our flood survivors and folks that are struggling during COVID too. We recommend you go to reliefmidland.org. That's another hub that's actually associated with 211, but is part of the long-term recovery group's way of just getting information out there. So there's a really helpful frequently asked questions info sheet that's out there. And then there's also that's where these recordings are, as well as the midlandfoundation.org website. So we encourage you to check out those resources. But we appreciate the time that the Midland Business Alliance and Tony and Nicole have given us and all that you guys are doing out in the community. And yeah, we look forward to, like you said, Tony, coming out on the other side much stronger and more resilient. And it's because of community members and businesses that are really banding together. So thank you for your time. And just as a reminder too, so our next session is 2 weeks from today, October 15th. So you can register using the link on the midlandfoundation.org website. And we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks and have a great day.